Good afternoon. Hello. I am Denise Downey, and I'm here today to talk about your financial health. I think this is a very timely topic. I think I fall in the New Year's resolutions category, where a lot of people, this potentially is a New Year's resolution of theirs to improve their financial health. So hopefully today you'll walk away with a little bit more knowledge about your finances and how you can improve them. So a little bit about my background. I have about 20 years of experience in the financial services industry. About 3 years ago, I decided to start my own business, actually 4 years ago. And so now I'm self-employed. I own financial Trex. I'm just, it's a one-person shop. It's just me, and I do financial planning for about 50 clients right now. So today we'll talk a little bit about, first, getting organized. So I feel like half of figuring out what your financial health is getting organized. And that is sometimes painful for some people. Most of the time, it just requires you sitting down and getting everything together. If you're married, this could be, or in a relationship, this could be even more difficult or more advantageous as you sit down together and discuss your finances together. But it really is an important part of improving your financial health. Then we'll do some math. I'll try and keep it easy. For the people here, you can grab one of these cards over here, and some of the there's that one. The calculations that I go through are on the back of the cards too. So, and then I'll talk about ways to improve those numbers. Okay, so what is financial preparation? Awareness is a key ingredient to success. I mentioned this before, but oftentimes when I meet with a new client, it really is a big hurdle for them to get organized. And that's one of the key areas that I do help my clients with, even though it doesn't really require a lot of, I don't use my certified financial planning designation to help them get organized. It really is such an important part of improving your financial health. Most people that I work with, they do not even know what their net worth is. They do not know how much debt they have. They do not know how much assets they have, because they have not gone through the process of getting everything together in one place and looking at it on one piece of paper. So that's the first step, is just getting everything together. I created a list here. Oh, I don't know, it's kind of hard to see there. But there's three main categories when it comes to getting organized that you're going to want to kind of create, whether it's if you get a pen and paper out and do it, or if you create a spreadsheet, any way works, but just, if you get it all together. So the first category is assets. And so underneath assets, you're gonna look at your retirement savings, real estate, any bank accounts, investment accounts. A lot of clients will ask me if I include cars or boats, things like that under assets. You definitely could. Those are considered depreciating investments, so I don't know if I would really, I don't really look at them too much as an asset unless it's a collectible type car or boat. For liabilities, this is what you owe. So with this one, we're going to look at mortgages, student loans, credit cards, car loans, any other kinds of loans that you might have. And then finally, insurance protection. So with insurance, we're going to look at life insurance, property insurance, auto, and disability. And so, and let me take a step back and explain too why all this is important. Why, this is Startup Spokane. So a lot of you are small business owners or entrepreneurs, or you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. And this isn't really specifically about your business's health. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about your personal financial health. And the reason why how that pertains to your business, how that pertains to the startup, is it really is a good foundation. A lot of times, I know myself, I'm an entrepreneur, and when I took that leap to start my own business, I had to make sure that I was on good financial footing before I did that. It's not very common for people to start off with starting their business and start making a profit on day one. So oftentimes it takes a lot of time before the business starts making money, so you have to make sure that you're on good financial footing before you start that path. I don't know if there's any statistics around this, but I do work with a lot of small businesses, and I've found that when small businesses struggle and when they have problems, it's usually because of money, and it's usually because the business is not making money fast enough, or they weren't making as much as they thought they were, and the person who started the business needs money. They need money to pay their employees, they need money to pay their own mortgage, to put food on their table. So by getting everything organized, making sure your own personal financial health is good before you start down that path, it's key. It's very important to the success of your business. So, okay, so now that we've gotten all organized and gotten everything together, let's start jumping into some of the calculations. I'm going to go through a couple key financial metric calculations. Now these calculations I go through with every single one of my clients. When I onboard my clients, I'll go through them, and then I will track them throughout the duration of our relationship together. And so I'm going to start off easy. So the first calculation that we're going to go through is net worth. And so many people, I've given this presentation to large rooms of people before, and I've had people raise their hands on whether or not they know just off the top of their head what their net worth is. And about half the people usually in these bigger rooms don't know what their net worth is, just off the top of their head. They might think about it a little bit. And then in my experience with bringing on new clients, I found that most of the clients that I bring on are surprised by their net worth. Once we actually sit down and calculate what their net worth is, they were a little bit surprised by it. So anyway, so this is something that you should know. You don't have to calculate this every day. In fact, I would discourage you from doing that. You might drive yourself nuts with doing this, but this is something that at least once a year, you, and then if you're in a relationship with your spouse or significant other, you should be sitting down and calculating this once a year just to see where you stand. And so simple math, it's just total assets minus total liabilities. So going back to that spreadsheet that we created, or that list of assets and liabilities, just take the assets minus the liabilities, that's your net worth. And I went through areas that you can improve these. And through all these calculations, you'll see that there's an improve by section. So of course, just basic arithmetic, you can improve this by decreasing your debt or increasing your assets, or both. And so hopefully over time, you work to do both of those, to increase assets and decrease debt. So a lot of people ask me, okay, where do I fall? Where do I fall? If I'm 35 years old or 40 years old and this is my net worth, what should it be? And I don't have an answer for that. I don't, I'm sorry. Everybody's situation's a little bit different, but I thought this was interesting. I pulled up, based off of a survey from the Consumer Finances, what the average American net worth is, and then the median American net worth. It's really hard to see that, I apologize. But I thought that these numbers were really interesting. It really shows the difference between average and median. And I don't know if any statistics people out there, but average, just to take a step back and explain, average is basically if you have all these numbers, let's just say 100 numbers, you add them all up, divided by 100. So that's the average. The median is if you lined up all those numbers on a line and picked the middle number. That's the median. And so you can see that these numbers are very much skewed. So the average and the median are very different. So this tells me the average for all of these is way higher than the median. So I don't know, to me that tells me that one of two things is happening. Either there's a couple of people on the very, very upper echelon, that a couple of age 35-year-olds that have millions of dollars that are skewing the averages, or there are a whole bunch of people on the lower end of the spectrum that are providing numbers, actual line item numbers on the lower end of the spectrum. But I thought that these numbers were very interesting. I struggled with even putting this slide in here, because what I really don't want people to do is to compare themselves to other people. Everybody is different. You are your own person. Everybody's going down their own path in their own way. So I really just, one of my pet peeves is when people try to keep up with the Joneses. But I thought this was interesting to look at. So through these numbers, I thought that it would be interesting to go through a live example. So I'd like you to meet two of my clients, Lily and Marshall. I don't know does anybody recognize those names? Anybody? No? Okay, all right, got one. So, How I Met Your Mother fan over there. So, all right, so this is Lily and Marshall. They are a young couple that I'm working with, and they, fictional, of course, but so here are some of their assets and liabilities. So I kind of listed this out to help understand how these calculations are made. So assets, they have a home, they have retirement savings, and then some other savings, maybe an emergency fund or something. one of the biggest mistakes people make when they calculate their net worth is they include the mortgage, but they don't include the value of their house. So that's important, that's a big one. So be sure, if you have a $300,000 house and a $250,000 mortgage, you still have $50,000 in equity in that house, so don't discount that. So add your estimated home value here, the full value of what you think your home is, and then we're gonna counter that by the mortgage in the other section. So assets there, liabilities, we have mortgage, student loans, and car loan. So just do some basic math. They have a net worth of $102,000. Again, I'm not going to comment on whether that's good or bad. I would say that if your net worth is negative, you definitely want to work to get that into positive territory. But it's not uncommon to have a negative net worth, especially if you don't own your home. I work with younger clients, and I have a lot of clients in their 20s that do have negative net worth because they don't own a home yet and they have student loans. And so they're just kind of going right out of college into negative net worth. But it should be some motivation to start, moving in the right direction. All right. Next calculation is cash flow. So cash flow, this is really where the rubber hits the road. And this is an extremely important part of improving your finances and really getting a good gauge on your finances. Now this calculation can be a little bit painful. It's not painful because it's difficult to do the calculation. It's painful because it's difficult to get the numbers to do the calculation. So it's calculated by taking your monthly take-home pay subtracted by your monthly expenses. Monthly take-home pay, that's pretty easy for most. You can usually, for people that are on salary, that's really easy. Just look at your paycheck. For people that are, maybe have a variable income, it might be a little bit harder, but just take kind of your average monthly take-home. The monthly expenses is where a lot of my clients get hung up. So it's really, not a lot of people know really what they spend on a monthly basis. And as painful as it is, I really encourage you to sit down one day, go through at least 3 months of expenses, ideally 12 months of expenses. Go through the last year and see where did your money go. I guarantee you will walk away from that exercise being frustrated, but you will walk away with some really good insight on where your money goes. Most people that I have go through this exercise are really surprised. I did it with my husband we've done it a couple times throughout our life, but most recently, we did it when I made the decision to leave my job, my W-2 job that had these nice cushy corporate benefits, and when I made the decision to start up my own business, that was the first time we did it, just to see what expenses we could cut, and we just did it recently too. And I have to tell you, the Costco category and the Amazon category was way higher than I thought it would be. but and that prompted us to take action. So that prompted us to say, okay, maybe let's go to Costco once a month. We don't need to go every other week, because every time we go there for a box of $35 diapers, we leave $400 later. So anyway, so I encourage you to do it. Sit down, figure out what you're spending on a monthly basis, everything. Go through credit card statements, bank statements, everything, and just figure out what your monthly expenses truly are. And of course, to improve this, again, basic arithmetic, you can decrease your expenses or you can increase your income, or both. Most people that I work with find it easier to decrease expenses than to increase income. Decreasing expenses usually can happen very quickly. Increasing income requires a little bit more strategy as far as, getting a new job, asking for a raise, creating passive income. Those are all ideas, but they take some time. So if your cash flow is negative, that's obviously a problem. That's not sustainable, and this goes for businesses too. Obviously, you don't want to have a sustained negative cash flow. So if it is negative, you do need to take action right away. There is no magic bullet to this. You just need to, decrease your expenses, really take a look at your budget and figure out what you can cut. Sometimes the decisions are easy, like maybe not going to Costco 4 times a month and only going once. Maybe it's a little bit more difficult, like getting rid of a car or second car that you have and using public transportation, or, looking into the different extracurricular activities you're doing, and so really just take a look at where your money is going, and is that truly where your values lie. I work a lot with my clients on determining their values and if their money aligns with their values. One example I'll give is one of my clients really wanted to retire early. That was a goal of his. He had heard about this FIRE mentality. Have you guys heard about that FIRE? So financially independent, retire early. So he was all on board, wanted to do this. When we looked at his budget, he was spending about $800 a month eating out. And so we had to decide, okay, you can't have both. You got to cut one. So either not retire early or not, spend $800 a month eating out. So that was one where there was a disconnect. I had another client where she was very into health foods. She had a family, her kids, she wanted her kids to eat healthy. She ate all organic everything. So when we looked at her grocery bill, or her grocery line item, she was spending about $1,200 a month on groceries. And so that was high, but that was in line with her values. That's, she was shopping at, this was back in Chicago, so she was shopping at the Whole Foods over there. And so it really was in line with her values. And so that was an area where it was okay, so let's look at other areas to decrease it. So anyway, I encourage you to go through that exercise. It's painful. You're going to not like it, but you're going to come out with some really good information about your finances. So here's Lily and Marshall. So looking at their take-home, so Lily's job, and by the way, take-home is take-home. So that's after all the deductions, after all the taxes are taken out. This is actually what hits your bank account every month. So from Lily's job, it's $4,500. Marshall's job, $3,000, and they have a passive income stream of $1,000. So total take-home pay that they have coming in is $8,500. I just listed. Usually when I go through this with clients, it's a little bit broader than this, but for the purposes of this slide, I kind of condensed their expenses down to certain line items, but it's about $7,000. So their monthly cash flow is $1,500. So a few comments on this. It's good that it's positive, so that is good. But I'm not going to stop there. So I think it's good that it's positive, but before I comment on whether or not this is really good or not, I would like to see more about Lily and Marshall. So I'd like to see, okay, what goals do they have? Are they, how is their retirement savings? Are they planning on buying a house? How is their emergency fund? Do they need to pay for their kids' college? So whether or not I comment on $1,500 is good it really is contingent upon where they're at with their other goals. Because what I do with my clients is I take this excess cash flow and I help them allocate it towards specific goals. So if $1,500 is enough to allocate towards those goals, then I would say that they're in good shape. But if they're looking at they need to save $2,000, $3,000 a month towards their other goals, then there would be some work to do with them. So, does that make sense? All right. The next calculation is debt to income ratio. This one gets a little bit more complicated. Not many people know this off the top of their head unless you went through the experience of getting a mortgage or other large loan recently. You probably don't know this about your finances. But how this is calculated is your monthly debt payments. So think about all of the, your mortgage, car loan, student loans, whatever the minimum amount that you have to pay each month, divided by your gross monthly income. Now the gross monthly income is different than the monthly income figure that we looked at in the previous example, which was the take-home pay. Gross is before all of the deductions. So if your gross income is $72,000 a year, then we know that you have $6,000 a month in gross income. So you can improve this by, again, using the arithmetic, paying down your debt or increasing your monthly income. So why is this important? I use this a lot with my clients. So one of my favorite clients to work with is people that want to go through a transition. So people that want to start up their own business and there's going to be a drastic change in income, or they want to buy a house and there's going to be a drastic change in debt, or they want to start a family, or they just started a family. So I use this to help them plan for those big financial transitions. I'll use myself as an example. So a couple years ago, my husband and I, we were living in Chicago, and we decided that we wanted to move to Spokane. Everyone always asks why. My husband's from Spokane originally, and and we were, starting a family, and this seemed like a better place to raise kids, and we've been really happy with the decision. So we made the decision I left my job, my very well-paying job in Chicago. I decided to stay home with the kids for a year, work on my MBA, and work on setting up my own business. Lots of changes going on there. So we wanted to make sure that we would be able to survive without my income in the mix. And so we kind of factored it in, okay, what kind of house can we buy and to keep our debt to income in line so we're not over leveraging ourselves when we moved here. So that's one example of how we do it. I had another client that wanted to take a couple years off of work and just kind of have he called it fun employment. So what we did with him is, okay, how much debt do we need to pay down for him to be able to live this life? And so he did. He worked hard at paying down a bunch of debt so he could lower his debt to income ratio enough where he could survive without his main source of income. Probably the most common way I use this is I have had a lot of people come to me lately for how much house can I buy, that kind of question. So real estate prices are just going kind of crazy around here. So so a lot of people are kind of in the market to buy houses. So I've had a lot of people say, okay, based on my income, based on all of this debt that I have, how much house can I really afford? Lenders will do that for you too, but I'll talk in a minute about why I think differently than what lenders do. So those are some really good examples of the debt to income ratio and how you could use it. So I would encourage you that if you are going to be going through some sort of financial transition, buying a house, changing jobs, adding to your family, buying a car, going back to school, sit down and calculate your debt to income ratio now and what it would be, what you anticipate it being with the changes. Okay, so looking at Lily and Marshall, so their total debt payments with their mortgage, student loans, and car loan is $2,900. And total pay is, gross monthly income is $10,000, $10,200. So their debt to income is 28%. So what's good? Is that good or not? So let's talk about that. According to lenders, I was actually a little bit shocked when I put together this presentation a couple years ago, but every time I give it, I kind of dust it off. I pull up new statistics, and so I Googled what lenders were lending at these days. It used to be 36%, that they would lend up to a 36% debt to income. Well, I found that now they're lending up to 46% in some cases. So it scares me. I really think that is way too much, way too high. That's almost half of your income, your gross income, that's going towards debt payments. So I strongly discourage that 46%. Financial planners are usually more comfortable with a 25% debt to income ratio, which is fair. That's a quarter of your income going towards debt payments. So I would say if you're below 36, if you calculate your debt to income ratio and you're below 30, if you're between 36 and 25, you might want to think about not adding more debt and really accelerating those payments, the debt payoff. If you're over 36%, I would call that a code red. I would say you really need to start accelerating your debt payments. Definitely don't take on any more debt. Put away the credit cards until more debt's paid off. If you're under 25%, you're good. You're good. So you should feel comfortable that if some sort of emergency were to come up, you're probably going to be in good shape. At 36% debt to income, I've been doing financial planning specifically since 2007. So I was doing financial planning in 2008 and 2009 when the Great Recession hit, and I saw a lot of people lose houses at 36% debt to income ratio. So it is too high. It irks me that lenders lend to that degree of debt to income. But you have to remember that lenders are in the business of lending money, so they're going to lend you as much as they can while they still feel safe. But that's my word of caution. Oh. All right. Next one, we're almost done here. Savings rate. So savings is, conversely, we talked about debt. Now we're going to talk about savings. So how much of your paycheck are you saving each month? How much of your income? Again, the calculation, these aren't difficult calculations, hopefully, but it's a monthly savings divided by your gross monthly income. So think about all the areas that you're saving. So maybe you have a retirement plan at work, or you're saving in an IRA, or you're saving just a regular savings account at the bank. If you have kids, you might be saving in a college savings plan, whatever it may be. Add all of that up, it all counts, and then divide it by your gross monthly income. So when it comes to saving, I'm just going to speak in like general numbers here. We really only have a third of our lives to save for our goals. If you just break up, assume you have a 90-year lifespan. 0 to 30, you're working on, learning, you're in school a lot. Even 20s to 30s, you might start saving money at that point, but really most people are in their 20s working on racking up more debt as they buy houses, buy cars, go back to school. So, really your hardcore savings typically starts around age 30, give or take 5 years. So 30 to 60, those are your prime savings years. Those are the years that you're working, you should be actively saving and trying to fund your retirement. And then hopefully by 60, you're in good shape with retirement. 60 to 90s when you're spending that money. You're in retirement, you're spending the money that you've saved. So when you think about it like that, it's so easy to say, I'm going to start saving next month, or I'll start next year, or I'll wait till I get a new job, or I'll wait till I get this debt paid off and then I'll start saving. Don't. Start saving now. Especially if you're in the 30 to 60 age range, these are your prime years, so don't let them slip by. And we'll talk a little bit about why it's important to start early. So Lilly and Marshall, so they're saving in a 401k, they're saving in an HSA. Do you guys know what an HSA is? A health savings account. These are paired with your healthcare plan. They're fantastic. So that's a whole other presentation I can give about health savings accounts. But if you have that option on your employer benefits, or through, they do have that, if you go through the healthcare exchange, they do have HSA eligible plans on there too. I'd be happy to talk to you guys about that in my office hours if you want. But anyway, they're saving in a health savings account. They're saving in an emergency fund. So total savings are $1,200. And then their gross monthly income again is $10,200. So they're saving about 11%. That's pretty good. Again, everybody's different, but depending on your goals, depending on how much you already have saved, I usually recommend at least 10% savings. 20% is better. For Lilly and Marshall, I would be asking more questions about, okay, how is the retirement savings? What other goals do they have? Do they want to buy a house? Do they want to buy a car? Do they want to send their kids to college? And then that would tell me whether or not that 11% savings rate is really good or not. Okay. I have a lot of slides in here about savings because I think that this is really the thing that really is most in our control when it comes to our finances, is how much you spend and how much you save. And so it really, try to be intentional when it comes to saving money. So think about it. Think about it every day. Think about it as you're doing your profit and loss statement for your business. Think about how you could save more money for yourself and pay yourself first. So I have a couple suggestions here. So actually, before that, so a couple key notes about saving. So interest compounds, and I know this seems very simple, but the compound interest, but it could really help or hurt you, compound interest. And so compound interest is interest on interest on interest on interest. So when you borrow money for your car, your house, credit card, you're paying interest on that interest every month. So every month that you don't pay it off in full, you're paying interest on interest on interest on interest. That has that snowball effect, and it could really get out of control, especially with credit cards. The higher the interest rate, the bigger the snowball effect. That's how it is with debt. It's the same way with savings, though. So with savings, it could work for you. So with savings, if you invest in a money market account or a CD, you get interest on interest on interest on interest. So that's one of the reasons why it's so important that you start saving early and saving often, because you get that compound interest effect. the best time to save is now. I'm sure you've heard the Chinese proverb that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. Same with savings. The best time to save $10 is 20 years ago. The next best time is now. And that saving should be a daily conscious habit. So there's do any of you guys use those? There's a bunch of apps out there now where you can save your change, or like I think Digits one. There's a bunch of them out there now where you could save your change. So if you use your debit card and it's $8.20, it'll put 80 cents into a savings account. There's a bunch of apps out there that make it really, really easy for you to do. Of course, they usually charge you, but just make it a daily effort. Is there some free ones? Mm-hmm. Oh, good. Which one? Quapital. What is it? It's called Quapital. Oh, cool. Yeah, there's a ton of them. I was using Digit for a while. I really liked it. It was amazing how quickly that adds up. Acorns, I know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They charge you $3. Yeah. So, and the fee's usually not that bad. I'm not totally against. I mean, they need to make money too. But yeah, those. I was surprised. I did Digit for a few months just to see what would happen. It was amazing how quickly that ended up. So, but yeah, it doesn't have to be hard. Make it a game. Set goals for yourself. But make it a conscious daily habit. I want to talk a little bit about time value of money, and I know it gets a little bit more complicated now, but so we talked about compound interest, how interest on interest on interest helps. So another way to talk about that is the term time value of money. So time value of money basically means that time also has a value when it's associated with money. The more time that you have to save, the less you have to save, and the more it grows. So the best really way to explain the time value of money is to go through an example. And this is really important when it comes to, when I talk to clients in their 20s or early 30s about if they have a 401k plan or retirement savings, I go through this example with them to help them understand that, retirement might be 30, 40 years away for them, but it is so important that they start saving then, because all the more they save in their 20s is just all the less they have to save later on. So going through our How I Met Your Mother examples here. So Marshall and Lily, they save $100 a month for 20 years at 7% growth, average growth. Ted waits 10 years, doesn't do anything for 10 years, but then saves $200 a month for that last 10 years that Marshall and Lily are saving. So if you do the math, they're both saving the exact same amount of money. It's just that Marshall and Lily saved less earlier on, and Ted saved more later on. Who do you think has more money? Marshall and Lily. But look at these numbers. That much more. It's like $16,000 more just by saving less early. It's outstanding. It's crazy how quickly these numbers rack up. So that's why it's just so important to start saving early, save often. You'll thank yourself later. When it comes to small business owners, I work with a lot of small business owners, and I have to say that I'm in this boat too, they care so much about their business, or the entrepreneurs, they care so much about their business, and they are reluctant to pay themselves first. They want to put all of their, especially early on in the business, they want to put all of their earnings back into the company, reinvest in the company to help the company grow. That is important too. I'm not saying that's not important, but make sure to pay yourself. So save in a SEP IRA or a Roth IRA, or even just a savings account somewhere. Just make sure you're putting some money away for yourself too. I feel like small business owners, or entrepreneurs especially, have a really hard time with that. Okay, when it comes to saving and spending, there is a general rule out there. It's very common. If anybody listens to financial podcasts or Dave Ramsey or any of those out there, you probably heard this, the 50-30-20 rule. So the 50-30-20 rule is essentially saying that generally speaking, 50% of your income should go towards living expenses. And so this is, mortgage, groceries, utilities, basic living expenses. 30% should go towards wants. And so those are the things that you like to do: vacations, eating out, whatever is a negotiable type expense. I would also include in there that if you have debt from a want, If you went out and bought a BMW and you have a car loan for that, versus and this is kind of splitting hairs, but if you bought, a luxury car versus a economical car, I categorize that as a want, the debt payments. I would categorize that as the 30% in the want category. That's splitting hairs, some people would argue with me, but really the wants should truly be negotiable expenses. Those should be things that could go away if you had to get rid of them. And then finally, 20% should go into savings. And so these are very general rules, but it's interesting if you look at your budget, when you go to your budget, see how much you're spending on each of these categories, and see if you're somewhere in line with this 50-30-20 rule. So when I was doing some research on statistics, I was like, are people really doing this? Because I meet with a lot of people that want to talk about their finances, but I feel like I only meet with people that are proactive about coming to me about their finances. So I did look up, are people really following this rule? Yes, they are. In fact, they're saving more. So based on this 2018 Bureau of Labor Statistics, 77% of people's money goes to buying stuff, and then 23% goes towards insuring for their future. Now, insuring for their future includes savings as well as insurance. So any money they're paying for health insurance premiums, life insurance premiums, disability insurance, all those insurance fall into that 23% too. I thought that was interesting. All right, when you sit down and do your budget, a lot of people will ask, okay, so I have, you're telling me to save money, you're telling me to pay off debt, I have all these bills that I have to pay. We haven't really talked about an emergency fund yet, but I will in just a second. So, where should my money go? This is a lot of different places for it to go. So I would prioritize it here. So, and again, everybody's situation is different. I've had clients where I have changed this around a little bit depending on their specific situation. But generally speaking, the first thing you should do is pay yourself. So pay yourself first. Nobody else is going to pay you as far as your savings in retirement. So make sure to make that a priority. So pay yourself first. Definitely for retirement. That's a goal that all of us have. I do have some people come to me and say, you know what, I don't ever plan on retiring, I love my job. Well, that's great, and I'm happy that they love their job, but at some point they might have to retire. Their job might be eliminated, their business might go under, they might have a health issue that prevents them from working. So everybody should plan for retirement, whether or not you plan on retiring. Second is bills and utilities. Of course, you want to make sure you keep the lights on. So pay those bills, utilities. High interest debt goes into this category. If you have credit card debt, if you're paying any interest that's over, I would say about 8%, I would consider high interest debt. Make that a priority to get that paid off. Third is insurance. Make sure you have all the proper insurance in place: health insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, car insurance, property insurance if you own a home. And then finally, your emergency fund. The emergency fund, depending on a person's situation, like I said, I might rearrange these, but the emergency fund is, even though it's last on this list, I do want to stress the importance of it. Especially if you're planning on going through a financial transition where you're going to be transitioning jobs or reducing your income or potentially going into a more risky income, like an entrepreneur, for example. You just don't know, where your income's coming from the next month. Those are all really good reasons to have an emergency fund. A couple notes on the emergency fund is rule of thumb, it should be between 3 and 6 months of your living expenses. So if your living expenses are, $7,000 a month, you should have somewhere between $21,000 and $42,000 in a bank account. The range comes with, there's two factors. So if you're a dual income household and one source of income is at least one source is fairly stable, you can go towards the 3 months of living expenses. If you're a single income household or your sources of income are pretty variable and risky, I would go more towards the 6 months of living expenses. So the money that's saved in this type of account should be in a savings account at a bank that's safe and liquid. So don't invest in Bitcoin. A lot of people, this is one of the other pretty tragic things I saw a lot in 2008 and 2009 is a lot of people were relying on their home equity loans as their emergency fund. Well, you know, if my car broke down, I'll just tap into my home equity line, or if my furnace breaks, I'll tap into my home equity line. Well, a lot of, I can't say this will happen again, but when the housing market crashed, a lot of banks pulled the lines of credit. Because the home values went down so much. So you cannot rely on the line of credit. You know, I guess it's a good backup, but I prefer to have something that's yours, that's safe, that's, you know, liquid in an emergency fund. So, all right. This is the last topic that I'll talk about. I'll kind of go through this quickly. Now, investments. I could probably do a lunch and learn every day for a month on investments and still just hit the tip of the iceberg on this one. So I'm going to go through it pretty quickly and pretty high level. But if you do want to talk more about investments, this is actually what I spend most of my time on with my clients is the saving and budgeting and then investments. So, but yeah, so if you want to talk more about this, you know, let me know and we could set up an office hours appointment or something, or get together offline. But so investments. I've convinced you to save a lot of money, hopefully by now. But what do you do with that money? I mean, the emergency fund, yes, should be in a bank account, savings account, earning next to nothing, but it's safe and liquid. Your retirement assets or your more long-term assets should be invested. And by invested, I mean stock market, real estate, bonds, you know, stuff that does go up and down in value, but it does also grow over time. So I do realize the stock market is pretty scary, especially right now. We're hitting these all-time highs every day, but it's still very, very important to invest your money. If you don't, and I see a lot of people that just don't invest their money because they're afraid. You introduce the risk of inflation. So inflation is right now, it's more than what most people are making in a bank account or a savings account. So that's why it's so important, is your purchasing power of your money will deteriorate if you do not invest. So I have this really busy slide here, and I realize you can't see any of the numbers, but essentially what this is it talks about asset allocation. So asset allocation is just a fancy way of talking about your mix of investments. So what percentage of your assets are in cash, what percent is in stock, and what percent is in bonds. And mutual funds, which a lot of us have in 401ks and retirement accounts, they're usually a combination of those. So, or they might be all stock or all bond. So mutual funds kind of fall into those same categories too. But over here on the left, we have a very conservative portfolio. And over here on the right, we have a very aggressive portfolio. Now, generally speaking, aggressive portfolios are heavy in stock, and conservative portfolios are heavy in cash and bonds. So stock is that stock is the part of your portfolio that goes up and down and all over the place. But over time, that's what produces the biggest returns, are stocks. So the idea is to get the right mix for you. And again, everybody's situation is a little bit different. But when you think about what mix of investments is right for you, I usually look at, first and foremost, is time frame. If you have a long time frame, somebody in their 20s or 30s, for their retirement assets, they should be aggressively invested because they can weather the storm. They have enough time on their side to weather the storm. People in retirement, maybe not so much. They still have to have some growth potential, but maybe they don't have as much time to weather any storms. So time is number one. Their ability to handle risk, their ability to sleep at night when the stock market goes up, down, and all over the place. That's also very important. And then their financial strength. So do they have an emergency fund? Are they outliving their means? So those are all key factors when I come up with a recommended asset allocation for my clients. So, but you can see here that the conservative portfolios, on average, earn between 5.5% and 2.5%. Aggressive portfolios earn, on average, between 10 and 6.8%. So just looking at those numbers, of course, you're going to say, well, I'd rather the aggressive portfolio because it earns more. But with that, you get these higher and lower peaks and valleys. And the bar graph shows, this is the, I think it's from, there's a number of years, for the past 87 years, the highest year and the lowest year. So this portfolio at 1 year produced 54% return. but it also lost 43% one year. Whereas the most conservative portfolio was up 32% in the best year, down 8% in the worst year. So of course, in that bad year, you would have rather been down 8% than 43%, but over time it does pay off to invest in stocks. Okay, so again, that's just the very, very tip of the iceberg on that one. Just some final tips to keep in mind. So as you walk away from this presentation, these are the 4 things that I'd like you to take note on, go back home and make sure that these are done. One is if you are living paycheck to paycheck, stop it. So stop living paycheck to paycheck, do something about it. Nobody else is going to take the reins for you, so you need to make sure that you do something about it. Go back to the cash flow analysis calculation that I did. The first step as far as stop living paycheck to paycheck is really scrutinize where your money is going every month and determine whether or not all of those expenses are truly expenses that provide value to you, and if they're not, then cut them, and then get back to the point where you have some savings and you have some wiggle room. Next is to pay off any high interest debt. This is not in your favor. This is working against you. So make sure those interest rates are working for you in your savings versus against you in your debt. And finally, save. So just, this should be a big theme of this presentation, but make sure you're saving. Pay yourself first. You have lots of goals to save for. Everybody has retirement to save for, but a lot of people have a lot of other goals. Vacations, houses, college for kids, cars. There's a lot of things that you could be saving for. And then finally, diversify your investment portfolio. So I talked just briefly about asset allocation and briefly about risk and return, but make sure you are paying attention to your investments. We've had 10 years, maybe 11 now, of positive years in the stock market. That's unprecedented. It cannot go on that way forever. So look at your investments. Don't ignore them anymore. Make sure that they're allocated in a way that is appropriate for you, for your risk tolerance, for your time frame, and your financial situation. If you need help with any of this stuff, that's what I do. Here's my information. So I didn't really talk about my business at all, but quickly I'll explain that. So I am what's called a fee-only financial planner. So I'm independent. I don't work for any company. I just work for myself. Fee-only means that I don't get paid any commissions at all. My only source of income is the fees that my clients pay me directly, which is different. Most financial planners work for a bigger company, and they will try to sell. They get paid commission for selling you products and services. Those products and services, I'm not saying anything bad about them. They might be good, but I just have a no sales pressure environment, and it's purely just a fee-only environment. So some of my fees are listed here. So I do ongoing guidance for my clients. It ranges, depending on complexity, between $450 and $750 a quarter. And then I do a lot of one-time projects for people too, if they want to sit down and kind of hash out their finances and they don't necessarily need the ongoing support. And that is at $200 an hour. As part of your membership at Startup Spokane is I do offer you 1 hour free consultation. So if you would like to schedule a time with me, just let me know and I'd be happy to do that. And my website, phone number, and email address are on there too. Any questions at all?
Question on one of the previous slides where you said that 23%. Right there.
Mm-hmm.
How is it, like, say, health insurance is part of that 23%?
Yeah, so I was interesting. These are broad numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, but yeah, so this includes all insurance. So. Mm-hmm. So I would imagine the premiums that they pay each month for health insurance. Is that your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like how it goes to it's in that category versus
the buying stuff category.
Yeah.
Because I think it's insurance is part of a financial plan, so it's not exactly savings, but it's helping to protect your finances. So it's helping that if you didn't have health insurance and you had an accident or got sick, that could derail your finances. So I agree with you. It's not really savings, but it is there to help protect your financial well-being. Anything else?
Thank you.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much.
Cool, thank you.